Welcome back to the Disaster Preparedness Network. I'm Jeffrey Stansfield. After almost 30 years in the emergency response community, one of the worst scenarios I can think of is facing an active shooter. Sadly, these events are becoming all too common. Dan Tomlinson is a retired LA sheriff and current LA CERT battalion leader. He leads an in-depth class in surviving an active shooter. Dan's full class can be intense and it's not for everyone, but I think you'll find this video worth watching.
My name is Dan Tomlinson. I'm a retired Manhattan Beach police officer. Manhattan Beach is a small city and has a small police department. And because of that, officers get a chance to work a number of different assignments. And during my career, I had the same opportunity. I was a detective. I worked as a hostage negotiator. I was a crime scene investigator, field training officer, among other things. After retiring, I still felt the need to contribute to the community, so I became a member of the LA Fire Department CERT team, or Community Emergency Response Team. I also became very active in emergency communications with several different groups. Active shooters, by nature, involve people who are emotionally distraught and because of that are unpredictable. No one can tell you what to do in any given active shooter situation. So what I hope to do today is to give you tools to put in your toolkit so that if you, in the unlikely event, you find yourself in an active shooter situation, you can choose the right tool for the specifics of your circumstance. A couple of definitions. An active shooter is an individual actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined and populated area. This is sometimes confused with a mass shooting, which refers to the result of the shooting, and by federal rule, they call any situation where a firearm is used to kill 4 or more individuals a mass shooting. And some federal agencies use the number 3 or more, which makes statistics a little hard to interpret. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about how big the risk is. We're going to talk about prevention, and yes, there are circumstances where these can be prevented. We're going to talk about the evolution of police response, which has dramatically changed since the Columbine shootings. We're going to talk about what you should do should you find yourself in an active shooter situation, and then we'll review. The bottom line of all of this is educate yourself and have a plan that will serve you very well in really any kind of emergency situation, but particularly in an active shooter. So how big is the problem? Well, it really isn't a huge problem, despite the fact that it seems to dominate the media so often. Active shooter situations are actually very rare. You're more likely to die from any of these other terrible things: gang shootings, hit and runs, robberies, home invasions, murder-suicides. So don't overly stress yourself about active shooter. But again, being prepared allows you to relax a little bit about it. The number of active shooter situations is increasing slowly, but it is increasing. And the worst part of it is the average number of those killed in these situations is also increasing. So who are active shooters? Well, in almost all cases, it's a lone individual. And you can use that in your planning if you know that it's most likely only an individual. Not surprisingly, it's almost always males. Lately, we've had some situation involving females, so you can't discount the possibility that a female is involved. 78% have some relationship with at least one of the victims. This is where the idea of prevention comes in, because there often is a connection between the shooter and some of the victims. Most of these are actually workplace related as opposed to terrorist related. Some have domestic violence ties. Very small are actually terrorism related. How do these situations end? Well, almost half of them end with the shooter committing suicide. And that's a very important thing to remember when you think about your planning and how you approach this situation. These shooters very often don't intend to get out of it alive. About a third of them end with outside force, either law enforcement, security, something like that. taking the shooter out. Again, about a third end up with the shooter being apprehended and not by force. And about 15% end with bystander action. And this is a number that I think needs to get higher as we go through these situations. If bystanders could take action and take the threat out early on, we could bring some of these numbers down. So where do they happen? Well, about 40% happen in a commercial setting, a mall, a business of some kind. About 20% happen in a school or other educational circumstance. About 15% happen outdoors in an open space. And about 10% happen in government offices. About 5% happen in residence. And lastly, only about 4% of them happen in a religious setting, although in last few years that seems to be increasing as well. Again, statistics are a little hard to come by because the individual states and even within the federal government, the standards are a little different. So we mentioned prevention. Can they be prevented? And the answer is sometimes. These have relationships in most cases with some of the victims. So there are warning signs that you could see that maybe you can deal with the problem before it gets to the extent that it becomes a shooting. In about 75% of the cases, the shooter somehow signals that they're in distress and that something bad is going to happen. I lost a friend to suicide many years ago, and in hindsight, his friends all say, oh yeah, we saw those signs, but at the time, we just weren't aware of what they meant. So sometimes being really alert to what's going on with your friends and family can put you in a position to solve a problem early on. What do you look for? Well, changes in behavior are the general rule. Increased use of alcohol or drugs might be a clue. And by the way, none of these by themselves is really a red flag. But if you see a number of these in somebody that you care about or somebody that you work with, it might be time to take some action. Decreased attention to appearance, depression or withdrawal, severe mood swings. All these are good signs that something's going on. Unstable responses, particularly somebody at work that is overreacting to something that occurs at work. These are signs of distress. Unprovoked outbursts, big time. Talking about domestic incidents at work, usually people keep these kind of things private, and when they bring them into the workplace, that might be a signal that the problem is getting near the breaking point. And then talking about severe financial problems. Again, this is something that most people keep private, and when they bring it into the workplace or bring it into the open, it may be a sign that something really bad's going to happen. And then the biggest one, and this one by itself might be a red flag, and that is somebody that is typically kind of really depressed, down in the dumps all the time, and all of a sudden everything seems fine with them. This might be a sign that somebody has made a decision to end their life and they've taken that burden off themselves. So that one alone might be a good sign that you need to take action. The big thing in any preparedness topic is situational awareness. What does that mean? It means being aware of what's going on around you. That's your best protection in any kind of a situation, is to be alert to what's going on around you. Always pay attention. Don't be the person walking around with their head in the cell phone that walks into a fountain because they're not paying attention. Keep your attention up all the time. Know what's going on around you. Always plan your escape. When you go to a new location, look for the emergency exits. Going to a doctor's visit in a new building, as you walk to the office, where are the stairwells? Where are the other elevators? Know how to get out and have a second option if possible, so that if something bad happens, whether it be a shooter or a fire or an earthquake, you already know how to get out. Trust your gut feelings. This is something I tell everybody. When the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, your brain is telling you something is wrong, and your brain is using all your life experiences to come to that conclusion. So trust it, take an action, and if it's wrong, you probably haven't done anything that can't be reversed, and there's really no harm, no foul. So we're now going to show a video called Surviving an Active Shooter. And a couple of things I want to say about this before we run the video. First of all, this is a pretty realistic portrayal of active shooters. It is graphic. This is not Quentin Tarantino graphic, but it is graphic. One of the advantages of being in Los Angeles is that Los Angeles Sheriff's Department has a film unit that's made up of filmmakers. So when they make a training video, it's very well done. And this is an example of that. I want to let you know that the video shows several different situations, and it tends to jump around between situations, and I don't find that it's always clear that it's done that. So just be aware that it is talking about a couple of different situations. This is not all one active shooter situation. And then the last thing is that the standard terminology now has become run, hide, fight. And that's what we're going to talk about for the rest of this session once the video is done. But the concepts in this video are the same, but they use different terminology. So don't let that throw you. So here's Surviving an Active Shooter.
A morning that began like any other turned tragic today when an employee opened fire on his supervisor and fellow coworkers.
Students, parents, teachers are asking why today, after a bloody rampage, plunged this campus into tragedy.
Details are just coming in, but we're being told that a heavily armed gunman opened fire this evening at the mall food court behind me. There's no official word on any casualties yet, but one eyewitness reported seeing at least 6 people shot.
Active shooter. A gunman or gunmen killing or attempting to kill people in a confined, populated area.
You gotta get some sleep. You're looking like a vampire.
You sleep. You ain't got no babies at home keeping you up.
What the hell? Sim again.
We've tried. I'm sorry. We're gonna have to let you go.
Active shooter killings are a tragic, unpredictable reality, and one that's becoming more common.
Since 2006, the U.S. has averaged an active shooter event with 4 or more deaths every 2.9 months.
Even though the number of active shooter events has been increasing, your odds of being involved in one are still very slim. But just like fire drills and earthquake preparedness, making a plan in advance can make all the difference.
Yeah, but lizards live in tanks. I mean, it's probably fine.
If you do find yourself in the middle of a senseless attack, the why doesn't matter.
Hey. Hey, buddy.
Hang on, something's happening.
What matters is surviving.
On average, 20 mass shootings take place in the U.S. every year.
Killers usually choose their victims at random. They look for easy targets. So the harder you are to see or to hit, the safer you are. When an attack starts, if you can find a way out of the location, do so.
Get out.
If you stay calm and think clearly, even in the middle of a life and death event, you improve your chances of making it out. Visualize your movements in advance.
What are we gonna do?
Look at me. I can get us out. Stay behind me. Stay now.
Use cover, something that will stop a bullet, and concealment, something that at least keeps you out of sight.
Attention South LA units, code 3 response needed regarding a 245 DSV 417. This will be at the town center shopping mall. Suspects wearing a face mask, possible body armor.
Use any available means to get out, including emergency exits or windows. Most restaurants and retail locations will also have exits in the back through kitchens or stock rooms. Even in the best cases, police are minutes, not seconds away. You must take action to protect yourself.
Okay, everybody stay calm. It's probably just a drill.
No, go back, go back.
Oh my God, come here.
If you can help others without putting yourself in unnecessary danger,
It's gonna be okay.
do so.
It's gonna be okay. What's your name?
Lori.
Lori? It's gonna be okay.
If you can't move safely to an exit, get to a room or a confined area you can lock down. Then secure the location.
Secure your location.
Oh my God.
There's somebody shooting.
Everybody stay calm. Remember how we train. Everybody get in this corner, away from the windows. Get the emergency bag from my desk. Help her.
Drywall won't stop a bullet, but there are steps to take to stay safe. Lock or barricade the doors, turn off the lights, move away from any windows, and silence your cell phone.
The other door doesn't lock. Move desks or anything, just block it.
A modern emergency bag can include a first aid kit, gloves, emergency plans for the building, and casualty cards to alert first responders to any wounded victims.
Most active shooter situations are over in 10 to 15 minutes.
Attention Lakeway units, code 3 is needed, red 245 GSV 417. It's going to be at Alexandria College. Multiple victims down.
Law enforcement's first responsibility when entering an active shooter situation is to stop the suspect, not to render aid to the victims. Medical teams will enter the scene as soon as the suspect is no longer a threat or is confirmed in another location. Silence any cell phones and remain quiet. Do not alert the shooter to your presence.
Sheriff's Department, is there anyone inside?
Red card.
Just hang tight. We'll be back to get you.
Defend yourself.
If you cannot escape the location and you can't shelter in place, you may have to defend yourself as a last resort. Almost anything can be turned into an improvised weapon. Look for something that can disrupt the shooter's ability to see, breathe, or control their weapon. When law enforcement arrives, they are going to be in a heightened state of readiness and awareness, looking for any aggressive movements. So keep your hands visible and follow any commands you are given.
He's a shooter.
What happened? What happened?
Oh, it's just a shooter. I just saw one shooter.
Especially in developing situations, engaging law enforcement, running toward them, reaching for them, even to thank them, could put people at risk.
Surviving an active shooter.
Anybody injured?
For more information,
Thank you. Seriously.
visit activeshooter.lasd.org.
It all comes down to run, hide, or fight. So let's talk about those in order. You've got to know your exits in order to run. So that's the first thing. Whether you're in a building or in an outdoor situation, know how to get out and preferably know several ways to get out. Run away from danger. It seems like it would be pretty self-explanatory, but especially in a large building like a mall, it's not always easy to know where the danger is coming from. So you probably want to look at what other people are doing and weigh that into what you're hearing and make your decision on which way to go. Don't delay your exit. This is critical. This is now a situation where you're fighting for your life and you need to take action quickly. Don't stop to gather your belongings. Your situation is going to be about as secure a situation as you can get because there are going to be police everywhere, so your property is going to be safe. Don't stop to treat the wounded, and that goes against the grain for a lot of us that have had first aid training. And I'm not telling you not to give advice to somebody on how to stop bleeding, but don't take a long time to do that. Give them a tourniquet or give them your belt or tell them how to do it or encourage them to come with you if they can. Just don't become a victim yourself by delaying your exit. Run until you're a safe distance away. What that is going to differ in every situation. As you're running, you don't want to take a lot of time, but you want to let people know that there's danger ahead and try to convince them to come with you. Find cover and concealment. What's cover and concealment? Cover is something that provides you a physical barrier to being wounded. A concrete block wall is a really good example of that. Concealment means they can't see you, and if the shooter can't see you, he's probably not going to be able to shoot you. Preferably, you find both. Obviously, cover would be the most important. Once you're in a safe spot, you want to call 911. In any situation where you call 911, you want to answer the dispatcher's questions. This is not the time for you to drive the conversation. The dispatcher has information, and they may need only specific information to fill in the gaps if other people have called. Or they may have to fill out forms in order, and they want the information in the correct order. So by following their questions, you're going to expedite the situation and get the right information to them fastest. Stay on the line until the 911 operator releases you. They may want you to stay on the line and provide play-by-play, or they may have enough information and want to let you go. The exception to this would be if at any point your situation changes and you no longer feel safe where you are, your safety is always the first priority, and you can either hang up or let the 911 operator know that you're moving locations. Don't speculate. Provide them only information that you know to be accurate. If you find out something that is secondhand information, but you think it's important that they know that, maybe somebody gives you the description of the suspect, then let the dispatcher know you didn't see it personally, but that's what you're being told, because that information would be helpful. If you can't run, if it's not safe to run, you want to hide. And of course, the first question is, where do you hide? Well, you want to find a secure room. And what's a secure room? It's the most secure room you can find. You're going to have to make quick decisions, and that means picking a location and pretty much sticking by it. So find a secure room. What's a secure room? Well, preferably a room with a door that locks, a room without windows, something where you can gather and not be immediately visible to the suspect. You want to barricade the door so the suspect can't get in. There's two different kinds of doors that you're going to encounter: in-swinging doors and out-swinging doors. In-swinging doors are the easiest to protect because you can just pile up equipment, file cabinets, heavy tables, use a doorstop. I recommend, if you're in an office situation, keeping a doorstop in your desk drawer. You can always kick a doorstop in, and it's incredibly hard to open an in-swinging door if there's a doorstop in there. So any of those, but be creative. That's, in any of these situations, being creative is going to serve you well. Out-swinging doors are much more difficult. Because they swing out, you can't block them with furniture, although you can block the entrance, and that will slow the person down somewhat. Be creative and use what you have. Tables and chairs across a doorway with a belt might work for you. Belt across the door handle tied to something inside the room. Use anything you can find. Even a power cord might be enough to stop that door from opening. Just be creative. If you've got a window in the door, you want to find some place where the shooter can't see you. And even if there's not a window in the door, you want to be out of sight when the shooter comes through the doorway. Typically, corners of the room on the wall that the door is on are good places to find cover. And of course, if you have heavy furniture, things like that, you might also find the ability to have cover from bullets. Turn off the lights. Not only will it make it harder for the suspect to see you in the room, but it provides you with another advantage you might not think of. Anybody that's come inside from a bright light outdoors knows that it takes a little bit of time for your eyes to adjust to the darkness. So that gives you a little bit of advantage as the suspect comes from a brightly lighted hallway into the dark room. So turn the lights off. Silence your cell phones, and that doesn't mean just putting your phone on mute. If you're huddled up against the wall and your cell phone is on vibrate, that wall is going to amplify that cell phone vibration and give your location away. So either totally silence your phone or better yet, turn it off altogether. While you're in the room, use your time to formulate a plan to fight. What can you use as a weapon? Who has martial arts training or fighting experience? And who can't commit to an all-out fight? This is going to be a fight for your lives. And there are some people that just can't do it. And now is the time to find that out. There's no shame in not wanting to fight. Those people can be given another job. For example, if you're able to knock the gun out of the suspect's hand, have that person retrieve the gun while you're trying to secure the suspect. So give everybody a job, but make sure it's a job they can execute, because when the time comes, it's going to be time to get down to action and no time to think about it. Reevaluate your options as you wait. Generally speaking, we recommend that you stay in the room and don't leave the room. But there might be changes in circumstances that would let you escape through an outside window, for example. Generally speaking, I would not go back into the hallways or back into the area where the suspect was last seen. And remain until the police release you. You may hear quiet for a long time and think it's time to venture out. Your best bet is to stay until the police come. They're going to be searching that building for not only the suspect, but for evidence and everything else. So they will come and they'll get you when it's safe. Refrain from peeking. I know everybody wants to peek and see what's going on, but it's not a good idea. If you have to look out, pick a location where the suspect won't expect you. Very low in a window or very high in a window. The suspect's going to be looking at you basically at normal height. Treat injuries. While you're there waiting is the time to stop particularly critical wounds like heavy bleeding. This is where a course called Stop the Bleed is very useful. The course is available at a lot of local hospitals. It's offered by CERT on occasion, and it's a very great course designed specifically with shooting situations in mind. It's designed to treat those major wounds that are going to cause somebody to bleed out and to stop the bleeding before it's too late. So learn how to do that, learn how to do basic first aid, and take the time while you're waiting to treat those injuries. If the situation is such that the shooter is going to come through that door any minute, your only choice is to fight. Don't waste your time negotiating. The suspect has planned this well in advance and probably is not planning on getting out of it alive. So efforts to try to convince them to give up are probably not going to work. Make a plan. You've probably already done this, hopefully, while you were in the hide stage, but have a plan. Improvise weapons. What have you got? Brooms, sticks, chairs, anything really can be used as a weapon. Fight with aggression. This is a fight for your life. This is not time for rules and regulations and fair fighting. This is time to fight with everything you've got. Your goals in your fighting? Surprise. We talk in law enforcement about the fatal funnel. When we're coming through a door into a room where we think a suspect is hiding, we know he has the advantage because he knows how we're getting into that room. So all he has to do is watch that room. Well, now the roles are reversed. You're in the room and you know where the suspect is going to enter. So plan on that. Also plan on them having some night blindness. We talked earlier about the difference between a bright room and a room with the lights turned off. They're going to have a little trouble seeing when they get in the room, and they're going to have to scan that whole room to try to find you. So take advantage of that. You might try a strategy such as this. With an in-swinging door, stack your fighters up on the non-hinged side of the wall. That way, when the suspect comes through the door, you're ready to attack. You've already hopefully assigned each fighter a role. Who's going to go after the gun? Who's going to try to blind the suspect? Have a role. Who's going to collect the gun if it's knocked loose? Everybody should know what they're doing. So when that suspect comes through the door and they're distracted, they've got a little bit of vision loss, now's when you hit them. In a outswinging door, you can stack people on both sides of the room. Again, the strategy is the same. You're going to hit them when they come through the door, when you have that element of surprise, and get them while they're vulnerable. Your next goal is to separate the weapon from the suspect. Hopefully you've assigned people with that goal and use whatever you have to knock that gun out of their hand. There are simple gun takeaway techniques that you can learn, certainly not in a video like this, but there are videos on YouTube. There is an excellent martial arts program called Krav Maga that teaches gun takeaway techniques in addition to other things. And they're relatively simple to learn, but they need to be learned and they need to be practiced. But to do that, you need to understand firearms. And I understand that many of you maybe never have had a firearm in your hand. So we're going to talk a little bit about guns and where you can gain the advantage. This is the revolver. It's probably the picture most people have of a gun. We don't see them as often anymore, but they're still out there. There are some points on a revolver that are vulnerable. The first area of vulnerability is the cylinder. When the bad guy squeezes the trigger, that cylinder rotates to put a new bullet in line with the barrel. So if you can prevent that cylinder from advancing, you can stop the gun from firing. A note here, though, is that if he's been firing that gun, it's going to be very hot, and you're probably going to get burned, so you need to be prepared for that. Next thing is the trigger. The trigger has to go through its range of motion, which means if you can get your finger or something else behind the trigger, you can prevent the gun from firing. Again, be aware that you're probably going to get your finger crushed a little bit in doing that, but it's certainly better than the alternative. And then lastly, on a revolver, the hammer. It has to go through its range of motion. So if you can prevent the hammer from moving, you can stop that gun from firing. So there are 3 ways that you can prevent the gun from firing. And if you're lucky and skillful, you may be able to exercise more than one of them and really get control of that gun. More commonly found today is the pistol or semi-automatic. They have vulnerabilities as well. The top of this image there is the slide. And when the gun is fired, that slide moves backwards, stops, and then a spring forces it forward with great pressure. That's what moves the next round into position to be fired. So once again, if you can stop that slide from advancing or even significantly delay it, you're going to at least cause the gun to jam. Next is the trigger. Same thing with a revolver. If you can prevent the trigger from being moved, you can prevent the gun from firing. Again, the hammer, same thing. You can prevent the gun from firing by blocking the hammer. A couple of other areas on a semi-automatic or a pistol. There's the magazine release. If you can press that magazine release, in most cases the magazine will fall from the gun and he won't be able to fire another round. A warning on pistols, and that is that if the gun is being carried with a round already in the chamber, any of these actions that you take will still allow the gun to be fired one time. So it's very important that you make sure that gun is pointed away from the good guys. So your movements, and in gun takeaway techniques, this is what you learn. Your movement will be to turn the gun away from the good guys while exercising these vulnerabilities so that the gun can't fire. While you're working to separate the weapon from the suspect, you're also working to disable the shooter. And that can mean any of a million different things. Blinding them, hurting them so bad, breaking a knee, breaking an elbow, anything that can keep that shooter from hurting you. And again, there are no rules to this. Whatever it takes is what it takes because you're in a fight for your life. Once the suspect is down, carefully watch him. We've all seen the movie where the suspect is down and the good guys turn and high-five each other and the suspect comes back and starts shooting. You don't want that to be you. Watch the suspect. Make sure they really are dead or they really are wounded. They're really unconscious. Make sure they're no longer a threat. And along that line, tie them up if you can. Use a belt, a zip tie, a power cord, whatever you have to tie the suspect up and secure them. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what the police are going to do when they arrive. When they first get there, they have very little information about what's going on. They're going to do the best they can with limited information. If you think back to the audio that we played at the beginning of this session, all the officers knew was that there was an active shooter in a very large government building and that they were moving throughout the building. They had no description, no number of suspects, so they had very little information. So keep that in mind that the officers are at a real disadvantage. How officers treat active shooter situations has changed dramatically since the Columbine shootings. At the time of Columbine, the standard training across the country was you secure the scene and you wait for SWAT to arrive. Well, with Columbine, unfortunately, we had kids dying while the cops were waiting outside. The police were very heavily criticized for that. And even though the officers were doing what they were training, their training really was deficient. So after Columbine, they came up with a plan where all police officers are given basic SWAT tactic training. And they all are trained in basically the same way. So when those officers arrive, whether they're from the same department or from different departments, they all know how to form up a small team and go in and look for the suspect. The job of the officers when they get there is one thing, and that is to eliminate the threat. That means that they're not there to rescue hostages. They're not there to treat injured. They're there to stop the problem, because as long as the suspect is active, the threat is still there and the number of victims is potentially growing. Things changed again with the LAX shooting, where the TSA agent was killed. The autopsy later revealed that he bled to death, and had he been given medical treatment earlier, he might have survived. So they decided to create what's called tactical medics. Tactical medics are either police officers that have gone to paramedic school or firefighter paramedics that have gone to SWAT tactics school. The idea is that they accompany entry teams as they enter the building, and they can treat the most critically wounded patients. Now, they probably won't go in very early in this situation, but when the suspect is still at large but known or thought not to be in a given area, the tactical medics will enter. LAFD calls their tactical medics TEMS units, and they have them that are on call all the time. So when the police arrive, you need to follow instructions precisely. This is not the time to debate police tactics or to question why they're there or what they're doing. This is an active situation. Do what you're told to do, and you'll get out of the situation alive, hopefully. And if you still feel the need to question what they did, you've survived the situation and are able to do that. Only provide them information if asked. They may not want to know what you've seen at that point. So only if they ask you do you stop to provide information. The key thing, and this is true anytime you interact with the police, is to keep your hands visible. One of the first things they teach you in the police academy is that hands kill. If you can control the hands, you can reduce your risk to practically nothing. So keep your hands visible at all times. Remember, they don't have a lot of information about the suspect, so they're going to consider you to be a suspect until they know better. So keep those hands visible and expect to be treated as a suspect, because that's exactly what's going to happen. And expect to be detained and questioned. Even if the suspect is dead, they need to fill out reports and they need to be thorough in their investigation, whether it be to learn for the next situation, or maybe they're not sure that the suspect acted alone. So you will probably be moved. They'll keep you as comfortable as possible, but it's going to be probably a prolonged detention and questioning. So let's review what we've talked about today. Run. If you can get out, get out. Don't hesitate. Just get out and get to a place of safety. If you can't run, you want to hide. You want to find a place that's as secure as possible, preferably one that offers cover or concealment, or better yet, both. Make a plan while you're hiding so that if it comes time to fight, you're ready and you can take on the suspect effectively. And of course, you want to treat injuries, particularly gross injuries that are resulting in lots of bleeding. Get those injuries stopped, and in advance of it, take a Stop the Bleed class so you're ready. And then if there's no other choice, if the suspect is coming through that door, you're going to have to fight. Hopefully you've made a good plan. Everybody knows their role. You've found a way to stage yourself so that when he comes through that door, you take advantage of the fact that he's having to look around the room and is distracted, and the fact that maybe he's got some vision impairment because of the light change. and use your improvised weapons, fight with aggression. Again, it's him or you. You're going to win this fight. That's in your mindset the whole time. You're going to fight till you win, and there's a good chance you will. And then fight until the threat is gone. Whether that means the suspect moves on, that means the suspect is dead, or the suspect is tied up. Fight until the suspect is no longer a threat. I want to thank you for spending the time with us today and for engaging in the Valley Disaster Preparedness Fair.
Good advice on a difficult topic from my friend Dan Thomason. I hope you found this video valuable. If you did, please hit the thumbs up button and feel free to leave us any comments or suggestions below. And be sure to subscribe to our channel to unlock exclusive bonus content as well as access to all kinds of free stuff. Thanks for watching the Disaster Preparedness Network. We'll see you soon. Please subscribe.